President Trump continuing his successful 12-day trip to Asia. Mr. Trump already making good on promises to promote the denuclearization of North Korea and expanding American interests in the region. But you wouldn't know it by watching the mainstream media. They're focused on creating fake news like this.
Mr. Trump feeding Asian carp at a koi pond, first tossing spoonfuls of fish food before emptying the entire box.
President Trump broke protocol in Japan by dumping an entire box of fish food into a Japanese koi pond.
The president said, enough of this spoon stuff, okay?
Just take it.
Yeah, I know. And the Japanese president said, okay, I'll do that too.
Joining me now to analyze the president's Asian swing is former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski. So as we all know, the whole fish deal was fake news, Corey. Turns out the Japanese prime minister, as the video shows, dumps his food first, and President Trump follows. Now, if they're going to lie about feeding fish, what else has the mainstream media been lying to us about?
Well, Jesse, as you know, they lie to us about everything. And this president is a person who wants to get things done quickly. So he dumped the whole thing in quickly to get to the next thing. This is what we want. He demands results. Feed the fish quick and let's move on. That's
right. Let's move on. I mean, if the media, they shouldn't be coy about their bias. I want to show you some footage of the golf match between President Trump and the Japanese prime minister. Kind of a little issue here. Trump's obviously in the fairway because he's hitting it straight. And the Japanese prime minister, we believe, not totally confirmed it's him or not, but finds himself in the bunker and hits out of the trap and is climbing up. There he is in white and, oops, falls back into the sand trap. Up, there he goes again in slow motion. Goodbye. So this is just one of the differences between President Obama and President Trump. He's playing a lot of golf with these world leaders and probably forming strong relationships.
Well, what we know is that the president of Japan and President Trump have a very good, strong relationship. And where one of those relationships was formed is on the golf course. And the president had the president of Japan here in the U.S. They played golf. This was the reciprocity to that. They have a good, strong relationship. And when you're with someone 4 or 5 hours at a time, you get to build on that relationship.
That's exactly right. Also, another difference between President Trump and President Obama, how they greeted the Japanese emperor. I think everybody remembers President Obama with the deep, deep bow to the emperor. President Trump, just a little nod and a nice handshake. Wow. Do you remember that, Corey, a few years back? Woo! Wasn't good for President Obama.
Well, I remember it very vividly, but I also know that the mainstream media didn't want to cover it, and they said, well, it wasn't a big deal, except American exceptionalism was at stake. And the difference now is that other world leaders respect President Trump and show him the respect that he deserves. And I don't think they had that same respect for Barack Obama when he was the president.
No, they did not. And you're right about that. The mainstream media completely buried the bow. Let's get into someone from the mainstream media, NBC News reporter out there asking President Trump about the shooting that had just happened in Texas. Roll the tape.
You've talked about wanting to put extreme vetting on people trying to come into the United States, but I wonder if you would consider extreme vetting for people trying to buy a gun.
Trying to what?
Buy a gun.
If you did what you're suggesting, there would have been no difference 3 days ago, and you might not have had that very brave person who happened to have a gun or a rifle in his truck go out and shoot him and hit him and neutralize him.
Now, this really bothers me, Corey, because we do have extreme vetting for gun purchases, and the vetting wasn't done properly. The Air Force never reported that this guy had these domestic charges against him, and that was the reason he got the gun, not because we don't do any background checks.
You know, when the president's overseas and he's just south of a madman, why don't we actually talk about the things that the world cares about, which is containing that madman in North Korea?
By madman, I think you mean Little Rocket Man. And the president had a message for Little Rocket Man. Let's see what it was.
You know, we sent 3 of the largest aircraft carriers in the world, and they're right now positioned. We have a nuclear submarine also positioned. We have many things happening that we hope, in fact, I'll go a step further. We hope to God we never have to use. With that being said, I really believe that it makes sense for North Korea to come to the table and to make a deal.
This is textbook gunboat diplomacy, where you have an armada right off the coast and you say, hey, little rocket man, why don't you come to the table?
Look, Jesse, I don't think Rocket Man wants to test this president's resolve about his ability to keep our country safe from a foreign enemy. And, you know, he was very clear when Rocket Man wanted to talk about launching a missile at our territory in Guam. Let me tell you this. I know the president very well. Make no mistake about it. If there is an attack on the United States, I believe they will respond in kind times 100.
That's true. And speaking of gunship diplomacy, we had some granddaughter diplomacy. Arabella, President Trump's granddaughter, I believe speaks fluent Mandarin Chinese, and that was on display in a video when the president met with the Chinese leader. Roll it.
This is really something special. You know, I know that this was something that they had talked about for a long time inside the White House to make sure that she'd have the opportunity to do that. And this is not the first time she's had the opportunity to speak Chinese to foreign leaders. And it's really special for the president. I'm really proud for him and his family.
I am too. And the Chinese culture really values the children and places a lot of stock in the parenting of successful children. When you have very successful children, as the president does, the Chinese people believe that that really says a lot about the parents. Now, he was also in China and called out the Chinese on trade. Let's hear it.
I do not blame China or any other country, of which there are many, for taking advantage of the United States on trade. I wish previous administrations in my country saw what was happening and did something about it. They did not, but I will.
Unfortunately, the people who were running our country before this administration, they were weak, they were bad negotiators, and they were taken advantage of. And those days are over, and now it's a policy of putting America first, which means making the best trade deals for our country for a change.
Well, they're actually doing it, because I have a thing right here. 37 major deals U.S. firms signed with Chinese entities during Trump's visit. I think they're to the tune of $250 billion. So it looks like things are happening on that front. Corey, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Coming up, real American videos of the week.